This is TWiT.
Facebook has removed a profile created by a DEA agent that used a woman named Sandra Acriette's identity, which included her name, photos of herself, and even photos of her family that he found on her seized cell phone. The Justice Department is reviewing the incident, but initially claimed in a court filing that the federal agent had the right to impersonate this woman online by creating a Facebook page in her name without her knowledge in order to communicate with suspected criminals. Now, she first learned her identity had been used back in 2010 when a friend found this Facebook page, although she had never set it up herself. Law enforcement officers had previously arrested Arcriette, alleging that she was part of a drug ring. A judge sentenced her to probation, but while she was awaiting trial, U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration Special Agent Timothy Sinnigan created the fake Facebook page using her real name, posted photos from this seized cell phone, and communicated with at least one wanted fugitive. The Justice Department's top spokesman, Brian Fallon, tells BuzzFeed, quote, "The incident at issue in this case is under review by Justice Department officials." Now, as far as Facebook goes, a spokesperson declined to comment on the case, though the site's community standards do say, quote, claiming to be another person, creating a false presence for an organization, or creating multiple accounts undermines community and violates Facebook terms. The spokesperson said there's no exception to this policy for law enforcement, although Facebook has since taken down the profile. You know, poor shell shock. It's the vulnerability that just gets blamed for everything. Yesterday, Yahoo told Security Week that servers associated with Yahoo Games had been hacked as a result of the recently disclosed shell shock vulnerability. But the company now says that's not actually what happened. It was a minor bug in a parsing script. Either way, Yahoo claims no evidence has been found suggesting that user information was affected by the incident. Yahoo Chief Information Security Officer Alex Stamos explained in a post on Hacker News, quote, "As you can imagine, this episode caused some confusion in our team since the servers in question had been successfully patched twice immediately after the bash issue became public." He's talking about shell shock. "Once we ensured that the impacted servers were isolated from the network, we conducted a comprehensive trace of the attack code through our entire stack, which revealed the root cause, not shell shock. Let this be a lesson to defenders and attackers alike. Just because exploit code works doesn't mean it triggered the bug you expected." Today, Twitter sued the U.S. government, alleging that the Justice Department's restrictions on what the company can say publicly about the government's national security requests for user data violate the company's First Amendment rights. This is kind of the next step for Twitter in reaching some sort of an agreement with the government on what level of disclosure is allowed about the scale of government surveillance. Currently, tech companies can report the number of requests they receive from the government in broad terms, such as 0 to 999 type thing. Twitter wants to be able to disclose the exact number of national security-related orders it receives. For example, 875 or 10 or even 0. Twitter's complaint describes wanting to report data in a way that reflects the limited scope of the U.S. government surveillance of Twitter accounts because Twitter posts are, by and large, public. And unlike, say, an email provider, the company doesn't really receive a huge number of requests. Back in January, the government reached settlements on this basically the exact same issue with Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and Facebook, all who withdrew their legal challenges. But Twitter argued since it didn't receive the same scale of requests as those 5 companies, it shouldn't be subject to the same limits. Government lawyers refused to amend the agreement to accommodate Twitter. So in July, the company said in a blog post that it was preparing to sue, and it has. Back to a little bit more Facebook news, if you're ready. The New York Times reports that the company is working on a standalone mobile app that allows users to communicate without having to use their real names. The Times is citing anonymous sources. The app, which may be released in a matter of weeks, is a bit of a departure from Facebook's long-standing approach that a Facebook profile with a real name is the way to establish your identity and connect to others in your online and offline social graph. But the company has come around a bit on offering anonymity to users. Earlier this year, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said the company would allow developers to incorporate an anonymous log-in feature to third-party apps that would let users try out different apps without limiting what information that they handed over, while limiting it anyway. And the last and following weeks of protest, last week, finally, Facebook said that it would allow members of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities to use not their actual given names, but names that they have chosen to identify themselves. So things are changing around Facebook. Now, a story about Facebook that has nothing to do with technology, or very little anyway. Some shuttle drivers that drive Facebook employees to and from the company's headquarters in Silicon Valley are seeking representation by the Teamsters Union in order to get wage increases and more livable driving schedules. The union wrote to CEO Mark Zuckerberg last Thursday, asking him to intervene on the drivers' behalf by pressing Facebook shuttle bus contractors to agree to bargain with the union on behalf of about 40 drivers who take Facebook employees to and from work. Quote, while your employees earn extraordinary wages and are able to live and enjoy life in some of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the Bay Area, these drivers can't afford to support a family, send their children to school, or least of all, afford to even dream of buying a house anywhere near where they work, says the Teamsters official Rome Eloise in a letter. One company official speaking anonymously to the New York Times said Facebook had signed a contract with the bus company for a certain amount of money, and that it was the bus company that set drivers' wages and schedules. Ars Technica reports today that Adobe's Digital Editions ebook and PDF reader is not safe. It's an app used by thousands of libraries to give people access to lending libraries electronically, basically e-libraries, actively logging and reporting every document that readers add to their local library, along with what they're doing with their files. Here's where it gets bad. The logs are transmitted over the internet in plain text, which is a no-no, unencrypted, allow anybody who can monitor network traffic, like the NSA or an internet service provider or a cable company or even anybody sharing a public Wi-Fi network to read those logs. The exposure of data was first discovered by Nate Hoffelder of the Digital Reader. He says he reported the issue to Adobe but never received a reply. This afternoon, an Adobe spokesperson told Ars the company is working on an update.